Another week, another round of job cuts. The Newman government today announced 300 positions will go from 2 departments, and there are more to come. The final number will be revealed in the state budget in 11 days' time. The Premier has suggested it'll be around 15,000. The opposition leader has been highly critical of the cuts. I spoke with Annastacia Palaszczuk earlier. Ms Palaszczuk, the Premier is trying to pin all of this on the former Labor government, saying that he's having to clean up the financial mess left by Anna Bligh. Does the former government have to accept some responsibility for the cuts that are happening?
Definitely not with these job cuts, Jess. Essentially, these job cuts are to pay for the Premier's unfunded election commitments. They need to find $4 billion over 3 years, and this is just one of the means that they are going to reach their target of $4 billion.
But Labor left, let's go through the figures, Labor left Queensland with a budget $4 billion in the red, borrowings totalling $65 billion, and the AAA credit rating is gone. Why don't you have to shoulder any of the blame?
Oh, look, we also have to factor into account that we also had the global financial crisis, we had the summer of natural disasters, $7 billion of reconstruction had to happen right across the state. And just coming from out west, I can see that infrastructure happening, especially around Emerald. We've seen huge infrastructure projects. The former Labor government was committed to ensuring that people were kept in jobs, and that's why we embarked on the largest infrastructure project that this state has ever seen.
Are you saying that Labor did an excellent job financially?
No, we have to take responsibility for some of the issues that did happen, and it was not a good thing to lose our AAA credit rating. But we put in place an infrastructure plan to keep Queensland moving, to keep Queensland growing, to cater for the growth, and now we're seeing this LNP government going along and cutting the ribbons of the infrastructure projects. If they didn't support our economic strategy, don't go and cut the ribbon for the new Supreme Court. Don't go and cut the ribbon for the new Northern Busway.
Are some public service cuts acceptable, needed?
Well, I don't think so, because the Premier never said before the election, he said before the election that the public service had nothing to fear. So every job loss is a broken election commitment.
The bureaucracy isn't bloated? Labor didn't hire too many public servants?
But even their own Commission of Audit said that the growth was in health and education. These were areas in community safety and police numbers. So we were investing in a growing Queensland population. And I think it's unfair that a Premier of this state is talking Queensland down.
But even federal Labor is about to embark on a program of public service cuts. But you deny, you think the amount of the public service, the size of the public service as it stands, is good as is. No cuts are needed whatsoever.
Well, there's no evidence. They're just slashing and burning. But where's the evidence? Where's the evidence that certain sections need to go? It is not being communicated, and this government is out of touch, and they're not listening to people.
What would Labor be doing differently right now to save all these jobs and still have the money to
we had
projects?
No plans to slash the jobs, because we went to the election, the last election, with a conservative estimate about how much our election commitments would cost.
So how would you be going about paying those wages and doing all of the other things that governments have to do?
Well, this is another thing the Premier and the Treasurer keep saying, that we're borrowing for wages, and we are simply not borrowing for wages. Even Doug McTaggart, one of their auditors, the Commission of Auditors, have said simply and very clearly that this was not the case, and he said that under oath. So basically, they are cutting jobs, they're going to raise taxes to pay for their unfunded election commitments. $4 billion.
So what would Labor be doing, again, to increase revenue and cut expenses to try to rein in the deficit and the debt?
Well, we had the summer of natural disasters, so we had a huge infrastructure project which we had to get the state back on track. We had to rebuild. We had highways to rebuild, railways to rebuild. That was our focus. And we were also, we were seeing the growth of mining companies and LNG.
That's why the books are in the position that they are now, partly.
Yes.
Given the state that they are in right now, you're criticising what the current government is doing in terms of trying to cut costs and increase revenue. What is the alternative?
But simply, Jess, their job cuts and their raising of taxes is to pay for their unfunded election commitments. Their projections, their budget projections, are the same projections that the former state Labor government had. That was returning to surplus in 2014-15.
Do you have an alternative financial plan?
Well, Jess, these are early days. I've been the leader here for 5 months. We've got a state conference coming up. We're very determined to rebuild, and we will have alternative plans in place by the time the next election comes around.
Annastacia Palaszczuk, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Jess.